This video is brought to you by the new "Oh yeah, the shirt was a thing" merch over at teespring.com/store/Cosmodore. Available in all shapes and sizes on shirts and hoodies, which, yes, I'm aware of the irony here, but they still look pretty rad. There's gonna be more stuff added to that store over the next few months, so stay tuned and look around. Maybe you'll find something that tickles your interest. Also, thanks to Embedded Code on Discord for sending me the proper video files for the show. They were pretty dang hard to find.
So, you got detention.
Detention sucks, I think. I never had to go to it, and considering high school is a couple years behind me now, that's probably an experience I'll never get to have in this lifetime. Which means I'll never get to apply all those helpful tips Ned gave me on it back in middle school.
So when it comes to detention, the best tip is try not to get detention.
Yeah, thanks, dude. You're a real messiah, aren't you? But as is often the case, considering what vile beings we truly are, we take great pleasure in watching others go through the misery for us so we don't have to. It's the same reason negative reviews on YouTube are so much more popular than positive ones. Both could be a film you've never seen before, but we just like seeing others suffer without going through the effort of doing it ourselves. Detention is certainly not a new topic of discussion within the world of animation, with shows like Clarence, The Loud House, and even Kick Buttowski dedicating an episode to one of its main characters being stuck there. And Bart was in detention like, what, 10 times throughout the series? Now you might say, how could you possibly make an episode where all the character does is sit in a room trying to pass the time interesting? And I hear you, but riddle me this. If it wasn't interesting to at least someone, how are there not one but two cartoons focused on it, at least? And not only that, both are incredibly unsuccessful and obscure, but hey, they do exist. Today's topic of discussion will be the Canadian teletoon show Detentionaire, which first aired in 2011 for a total of 4 seasons up until January 2015. It was made by Nirvana, who also worked on a bunch of other more or less popular Canadian shows such as Wayside, Clone High, and Spliced. And when compared to other shows that aired on teletoon, the first impression I got is definitely that of a more gritty and serious cartoon, not necessarily with a story arc behind it, but with a slightly older audience in mind, and lo and behold, I was right on both fronts. The show centers around Li Ping, your typical sophomore student who's just trying to make his way through high school alongside his friends Camille and exchange student Holger. But as the title would imply, this doesn't exactly go according to plan, as on his very first day during the inauguration of the school's new principal, someone releases gallons of slime onto all the students and faculty and frames Lee for the crime. This is what would be known as the biggest prank in high school history, and the framing device for everything that happens after, as Lee tries to figure out who really did it and why they needed to involve Lee into a scheme. So he uses his entire year of detention he got for a crime he didn't commit to find out. I'll be honest, when I first started watching the show, this setup didn't exactly grab me. Shows like What's with Andy and Punk'd only ever got popular because the pranks would vary with each new episode. I'm all for any mystery or crime investigation series, since those are literally my favorite genres, but the show just came across as too silly for me to think it would be capable of stringing along an ongoing narrative for what I knew at that point already would be 4 seasons. So I set the show aside for a bit, came back after a few weeks to continue on with episode 2, and binged the whole thing in like a week. It was incredible. Let me explain. So you see, the prank I was talking about really takes the center of attention with the show. If you're not into the setup, I doubt you will have a lot of fun moving forward. The way each episode is set up is pretty similar to one another. Lee finds himself at home on his way to school, unraveling all the details he has gathered about a new potential suspect for the crime of the last episode, leaving only the very first not to follow that structure. So as you might have guessed, a lot of the show involves Lee going around school, interacting with his fellow students and teachers, and trying to deduct who even has an alibi or possible vendetta against Lee. It's not a detective show, but many of the early episodes involve a lot of deduction like that. In doing so, we soon discover that not even the school itself is exactly what it seems, as you also may have guessed with a name like Enigma High. It's like our students going to Monster High know they're very likely to encounter some monsters there, or how Hogwarts students know that Dumbledore could have taken a dump right where they stand. Attentive viewers might have already noticed these hazmat suit wearing cleaners wandering around on school property, which already come off as a little suspicious, or the new principal Barrage with his glowing red eye. Even the school's mascot is an otherworldly creature called the Tazo Worm that inexplicably roams around the school, and no one seems to really mind it. So, is a slime prank even that out of the ordinary? A setting like this would already allow for some pretty interesting development upon its lore without the prank as an instigator, but it's cool how we as viewers get to see Lee discover all the secrets about a school along with him, creating a rabbit hole that goes deeper and deeper the more he digs. Barrage seems to always be one step close behind them, as he tries to get Lee and his friends back into detention. We're all more or less less helpful in finding clues, as Cam, the dopey slacker who only really cares about finding a girlfriend, usually goes along great with Lee's more stern and dutiful personality, while Holger is about as funny and stereotypical a comic relief as you can get. With annoying one-liners, a shrill voice, annoying one-liners, way over-exaggerated accent, and annoying one-liners. This character would often ruin about any serious situation Lee found himself in, with the show still trying to paint it so that he was the inexperienced new guy that only wants what's best for the group. But just cause you tell the viewer that a character means well, that doesn't automatically make him likable. Especially with such a one-note trope of the wacky foreigner that always gets them in trouble with his beautiful blonde hair and no goggles. What even is this design? He grew on me a bit more as the series went on, and even made me feel for him a little whenever he also tried to impress a girl and make things right again, but god, did he take some getting used to. We also have the school's rock band Dudes of Darkness, the school's outcasts, one of which becomes more important later on, and many more. Despite the mystery aspect, this is still your typical animated high school drama, and as such also features a dozen of different characters for Lee to interact with, which range over all the different high school tropes you've come to know and love, like the nerds, the jocks, the dropouts, and all sorts of different teachers that get in Lee's way. But not all of them, of course, as he quickly built up a reputation of being the local rebel for getting an entire year of detention, which also got him into a sporadic relationship with one of the glam queens, even though he really just wants to be with the news anchor Tina. Understandably so, as she's easily the most likable character on the cast, whilst often getting pushed to the wayside by her co-host Chaz. One of the more annoying characters, just like most of the authority figures here, which also helps underline how strongly the story is focused on Lee and his friends. Another one I failed to mention is school bully turned sidekick Biffy, who's stuck in detention alongside Lee and would often help him out of trouble whenever someone is close to busting him. Later on, he also starts dating another one of the glam queens called Kimmy, who, as it turns out, is far more involved in the plot as you would suspect in the beginning, giving us some more than interesting interactions between her family and Team Lee. Lee isn't the most interesting protagonist in the world, and while his deduction skills can be impressive at times, he works best when paired with other characters, where it's also not just us having to listen to his inner monologue all of the time. Much like Holger's design, his is interesting to say the least. It works well with how there would often be accentuated reds within this green-brown obscure environment to highlight the danger, or in the case of his hair, rebelliousness, but it's still not all that appealing, and neither are most of the other character designs. The animation itself is also admittedly cheap, walk cycles would often feel stiff, and facial movements limited to a few basic expressions, even during action sequences when tensions are supposed to be sky high. And don't even get me started on the background characters who are just kind of standing around. These aren't even in the same art style, are they? This was a shame, but not surprising, since the budget on the show is probably on the lower end. And if anything, the resources probably went into the writing, which was really strong for what the show is. Some other strong points include the pacing, which almost never made an episode end up with any filler or needless dialogue, and the soundtrack, which reeks of mid-2000s garage punk, as does the theme song, which does its job well, but could have conveyed the show's often more serious vibe better if you ask me. And it's even kind of similar to that of Randy Cunningham, which is the last show I talked about, and I can see some parallels with, like, the color choices and some of the characters, but there's definitely more story structure to this one. To the point where I would even argue it's kinda overlooked when I see people discussing animated shows with great continuity. It's kinda interesting how the show started Detentionaire, yet the only thing it really has to do with detention is that it's where Lee usually ends up whenever his investigation fails. It's really more of a set piece, as even the room itself comes into play later. Every location we encounter and character we meet in the story is important in some way, which makes rewatching the show very satisfying, as you see how they spliced in details about later revelations and piece by piece build up this big conspiracy behind the scenes. Cause I don't think I'd be spoiling much by telling you that the story isn't exactly over with the revelation of Rat Circle's identity, which by the way is the cinnamon the prankster used whilst communicating with Lee. If anything, the real story only begins after the two of them face off for the first time, and it becomes clear just how deep into this rabbit hole Lee already is. You'll soon start to question if even his friends are in on it. Could Holger really be the evil mastermind behind all this? Or Lee's mom? What about his dad? He starts acting pretty suspiciously later down the line. And even if they aren't, why do we only get to see so many characters every so often? And what is the meaning behind the new ones that get introduced later on? The twists and turns this series takes become so insanely complex over time that you'll start to forget what they were even trying to figure out in the first place. And yes, in later seasons that would also sometimes mean some arcs that just led into complete nothingness, even though they felt like they were building up to something, but but thankfully never to the point where I got bored watching. I felt like they were trying to artificially lengthen the show. It's difficult to cover Detentionaire without spoiling the entire mystery behind the show, but hopefully I still achieved my goal of getting at least a few of you to check out a show that I think unfairly gets overlooked, just cause it's an unappealing Canadian show that came out the same year as Almost Naked Animals. And though we may never get a proper resolution for that cliffhanger it left us with at the end of season 4, it still ended on a rather satisfying note that I reward attentive viewers for having stuck around till the end. So I'm sure you'll have some time to spare to check out Detention. That's awful.